Just a day after the US finally gave permission for Ukraine to fire American long-range missiles into Russia, Kyiv has done so. Its attack on a target within Russia's recognized territorial borders was confirmed by both Moscow and by officials in Washington. The change in US policy comes at a critical time, with the Biden administration due to give way to that of Donald Trump in January.
I don't understand why the Joe Biden administration had to put us into such a risky situation. Like, I've been hearing a lot of news about this incident that happened recently, and I just don't get it. Like, I don't get why. Like, is that good? Like, was that a good decision? To allow. No. I was also reading a lot of information where there's an opposite argument. Like, and I get that. Like, why is it okay for Russia to constantly damage and invade Ukraine, but if Ukraine retaliates, then Russia can do whatever damage they want, but Ukraine cannot retaliate. I mean, what kind of logic is that? Which is quite understandable, but the problem with wars right now is that nuclear weapons. Everybody has nuclear weapons. A lot of countries around the world have nuclear weapons. So it is very dangerous for countries to engage in serious wars. And the situation right now. It's not good. I mean, can you trust Putin to not do any kind of serious damage? I don't know. Maybe, see, when it comes to the use of nuclear weapons, if any country decides to use nuclear weapon, then the damage would be catastrophic. And because what happens is, when one country starts using nuclear weapons, other countries will see it as an opportunity. Like, oh, this is our time. Like, let's use this opportunity. So if Russia uses nuclear weapon, let's use, like, in a hypothetical situation, let's say, like, Russia drops nuclear weapons on nuclear missiles or whatever they're called. I don't exactly know. Nuclear weapons on Ukraine as a retaliation. What do you think North Korea would do? I mean, in their minds, it will be like why shouldn't we engage in a war? Like, we also have our pent up rage, and we also have our own issues and our own past traumas and stuff. So why not use this as an opportunity to gain leverage? I mean, let's also, hell yeah, we also want some destruction. So this is the kind of, like, this will spread as a virus. Like, everybody will want to get in, because like, a lot of these people are not good people. I mean, Putin or Kim Jong-un or all these dictators, to become a dictator, you have to be extremely heartless, right? So at that point, when you have become someone like Kim Jong-un, or you have become someone like Vladimir Putin, I mean, it's very difficult to say, like, what your next move would be.
Moscow says the strike hit the Bryansk region this morning. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that they will react accordingly. Today marks 1,000 days since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And this latest development is being watched very carefully by world leaders at the G20 summit in Brazil. More on that in a moment. But first, our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg has this report from Moscow.
Breaking news on Russian TV. Claims that Ukraine had fired 6 American ATACMS missiles into Russia's Bryansk region, though no reports of casualties. The response from Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, said the missile attack was a signal that the West wants to escalate the conflict. But is this escalation by Russia? Published today, a Kremlin decree lowering the nuclear threshold. Russia now reserving the right to go nuclear even if attacked by conventional weapons, if such an attack threatens Russia's sovereignty or territorial integrity. President Putin had promised changes to the nuclear doctrine weeks ago. A clear signal to Europe and America not to let Ukraine strike Russia with long-range missiles. Then, an even clearer signal. Russian nuclear exercises. A warning to the West not to cross Russia's red lines. But the key question, in Russia's war on Ukraine, would Vladimir Putin use a nuclear weapon?
I think it's quite serious, because even Putin doesn't know whether he can use nukes or he can't. It depends on his emotions. We know that he's a very emotional man, and the decision to begin this war was also an emotional step.
The lowering of the nuclear threshold does not mean that Vladimir Putin is about to press the nuclear button. These changes are designed, I think, at the very least, to put pressure on Western leaders who will now have to decide, is Putin bluffing or not? Earlier, at the Museum of Victory, the Kremlin kick-started commemorations.
No, I mean, yeah, that might be true because, see, in these kind of political power struggles, what happens is like, so from this, like, Ukraine did a big move, right, by using those long-range missiles and causing a lot of damage to Russia. Like that was a bold move. So in retaliation, what is Russia gonna do? They're gonna have to do their bold move. I mean, it's all what these geopolitical tensions really boil down to. Really, I mean, it's all a power struggle. I mean, it's basically it comes down to whose dick is bigger. So now Ukraine is saying like, yo, I have a bigger dick than yours. So Russia have to say like, yeah, look, my dick is bigger. So it's all a dick competition, really. But what if that dick competition escalates to a point where nuclear arsenal have to be used? Then that is, I mean, then things are not so good, right? So yeah.
For next year's 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Not a word was said here about the 1,000 days of Russia's war in Ukraine. A war which, for the Kremlin, hasn't gone at all to plan, but which it remains determined to win. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
So what is the situation on the ground in Ukraine in terms of territory gained by Russia? I'm joined by BBC Verify's Nick Eardley. Nick.
Thank you, Rita. 1,000 days of war have seen a number of ups and downs for Ukraine, but analysis of the picture since the start of this year shows things are going far better for Russia. Let me show you the picture for 2024 based on analysis by the Institute for the Study of War. This is the picture in February. If we fast forward to September and look at this area here, you can see Russia has made inroads. This might look like a small amount on the map, but it's a significant amount of territory on the ground. And that advance has continued in recent weeks. More land being taken by Russia. So far this year, Russia has seized nearly 2,000 square kilometres of territory, just over 1,000 square miles. That's nearly 6 times more than it did in the whole of 2023. Let me show you what all of this means in practice. This is Kurakhov in eastern Ukraine. You can see it on the map there. And if we show you this video, we can see the devastation. This is a key town Russia is trying to capture. It's come under heavy bombardment recently as part of the Russian offensive. You can see the damage that that's caused. There's been heavy fighting in the Kursk region of Russia too. Ukrainian troops captured, you can see it here, a large amount of territory in August. But Russian forces have now retaken, as you can see here, around half of that. All of these gains have come at a cost for Russia. Tens of thousands of troops have died. But as things stand, it looks like that is a price Moscow is willing to pay. And this is important with President Trump's return to the White House looming. Mr. Trump has said he can end the war in a day. It's not clear how, but if there were peace talks, territory will be an important bargaining chip. And some analysts think that Russia's recent gains will give it a stronger hand in any potential discussions. Rita.
Nick, thank you very much. Well, the G20 world leaders are meeting in Brazil, as you heard, and President Zelensky of Ukraine had some bitter words for them, making clear his frustration tonight at their lack of response to President Putin's change of Russia's nuclear doctrine. Well, in a moment, we'll speak to our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucet, but first to Vicky Young, who is in Rio for us. And Vicky, what have leaders there been saying?
Well, Rita, there's a pretty wide gulf here between the G20 countries in their approach to Ukraine, particularly how critical to be of Russia. So that joint declaration that they put out at the end of these summits, well, the language in that is weaker than the same time last year at the equivalent summit. So you can understand maybe why President Zelensky is pretty frustrated by that. When it comes to the British Prime Minister, he said that at every opportunity during this summit, he has raised the issue of Ukraine with the other leaders, saying that they really should have what they need for as long as they need in order to win this war. Now, whether that means that British-made missiles will end up being used in the same way as the American ones have been, well, we don't know. He just won't talk about that. He says that's operational and all it would do is help the Russians. He was also asked, though, about those comments from Russia about how and when they might use nuclear weapons.
There's irresponsible rhetoric coming from Russia, and that is not going to deter our support for Ukraine. We're now on day 1,000 of that conflict. That's 1,000 days of Russian aggression, 1,000 days of sacrifice in Ukraine.
Now, Keir Starmer, they're putting the blame firmly on President Putin, on Russia, saying they are the aggressor and saying they could just stop this war now by stopping that illegal invasion. Now, earlier, Downing Street actually called the Russian government depraved. So you can hear there that the rhetoric is really escalating. The fear amongst many leaders across the world is that the situation on the battlefield will escalate too.
Vicky, thank you very much. Vicky Young there in Rio de Janeiro. Well, Lise, we've seen Nick show us the fast land grab by Russia. Steve earlier talked about the nuclear threat. What does all this add up to?
Well, Rita, tonight, understandably, a lot of the focus is on this nuclear threat, and it's not reassuring to hear the Russian columnist in Steve's piece frame it as an emotional step. But the unpredictability of President Putin is very much part of this risk. But President Putin has many other ways to ratchet up the cost for the West and is already using them. As we've been hearing this week, the sabotage of undersea cables by Germany, then Poland is talking about the planting of bombs on planes, and so on. But the biggest question, of course, is what greater cost is Russia going to impose on Ukraine? As we've also been hearing, Ukraine is very much on the back foot, on the front lines, and is hoping that striking deeper inside Russia is going to strengthen its position in this war and in any negotiating tables which seem likely to emerge. But it may not work, and especially when President-elect Donald Trump moves into the White House with his threat to end the war. And so the big question now is, what happens when President Trump takes power? Will he reverse this decision regarding the missiles? Will he try to lines in this war? That must be on President Putin's mind as well. It's on many minds.
Yeah, but first Trump has to come into power, right? I mean, Biden has 2 months of like 1.5 or something months left as his presidency, and it seems like he's gonna risk our species, the human population, for I don't know why he did that. I mean, at the end of his presidency, he had to make that bold move, and he had 4 years, right? What happened suddenly? Why did he have to suddenly give this sudden permission for the use of long-range missiles? Or anyways, like, if it is gonna escalate the situation, why do that?
So you have two unpredictable presidents at this moment of mounting risk.